What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Mic Check Podcast. This is T Word, the People's Champ. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for future presentations, including our live video coming up on Friday, January 20th at 4 p.m. Central Time. That's 2 p.m. on the West Coast. We're going to have guest analyst Steve Kim, formerly of ESPN, now with snack.com. He's going to be on to talk boxing, as well as other topics that might come up if we have enough time. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. Today, we're going to talk about the NFL playoff football that occurred over the past weekend. We just hadn't had a chance to get around to the video, right? Plus, we had games on Monday and stuff like that. Well, the final game on Monday. So, wanted to make sure we got all the info in before we gave any analysis. So, I do want to recap what's going on over the weekend. 6 of the 8 division winners did go into action. 2 of them didn't make it out of the battle. So let's go ahead and start with the first games of the weekend. We had the Saturday games. You had the Seahawks and the 49ers. That game ended 41-23 in favor of the Niners in California, and that ends the Seahawks season. The 49ers look pretty tough. They've put themselves in a great position to make a nice deep run in the playoffs and potentially upset the number 1 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles, if they're able to make it past this upcoming weekend's game. Next up, you had the Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the San Diego Chargers. And these were both 2 good teams, but not great teams. And the game started off with the Chargers playing really strong. They go up by 27 points to eventually fall 31-30 on the strength of just, it's inexplicable. There's really no way to explain it. A lot of us who were kind of mildly keeping up with the game were a little bit surprised to find out that the Chargers ended up losing this game after such a big lead. I know before I even recognize the game has started and, kind of start getting the updates, I was like, wow, man, this ain't going nowhere. And then all of a sudden you see this great comeback by the Jags and Trevor Lawrence gets a playoff win in his debut. Despite throwing just a whole bunch of interceptions. I mean, it's hard to win when you're like -5 in the turnover battle. And if I'm not mistaken, they're the first team to do it in the playoffs. So, tip of the cap for pulling off the win, but things are going to get much harder next weekend. All right, next up, you had the Sunday games, and we got 3 of them. You had the Bills and Dolphins, with the Bills winning the rubber match 34-31. These are division rivals who settled it on the field to go ahead and close out the Dolphins season. So long, Tyreek. All right, next up, you had the Giants upset the Vikings, who a lot of people felt like was one of the better teams in the NFC. And the record said that they were a good team. But then, as Q and I previously discussed on this show, at one point, their record was kind of buffered by fluff of beating mediocre to bad teams. So that comes back to bite you in the playoffs because you're not truly battle tested. And a team like the Giants, who got it out the mud, and was one of 3 teams from the NFC East, they dug their way in and they went ahead and got a nice decisive 31-24 win. All right, next up, Bengals and Ravens. Bengals pulled this one out 24-17. Let's keep in mind that they were a part of the issue in the game where DeMar Hamlin got hurt. The Chiefs actually settled that on the field by getting the number 1 seed by winning their final game. So there was no need to even worry about the seeding because ultimately the Bills ended up with a better record. So the Bengals came in as a division winner versus getting the number 1 seed had there been some type of 3-way tie if the Chiefs had lost their final game of the year. So just a little something extra in case you wonder how things played out and how the NFL was able to just call the game without a final. They didn't call it a tie or a victory either way. They just called it done. So those teams finished with 16 completed games on their record instead of 17. And the Bengals move on. Next up, you had the Cowboys and Buccaneers on Monday night. And the Cowboys just stomped a mud hole in Tom Brady and the Bucs. There's no way to slice it. The Bucs weren't a very good team this year. They were a little better than the rest of the teams in their division. So you're kind of looking at the best of the worst. The NFC South was just a down year. Somebody had to win the division. The Bucs swept the Saints twice, and that pretty much secured them a division championship. If you flip it the other way, the Saints would probably be in the same position. And I hate to say it, but they probably would have lost to the Cowboys as well. That's just how things go, right? So coming up this weekend, you're going to have Jags visiting the Chiefs. I just predict that their season's going to come to an end, but I'll get a little bit more analysis closer to the game. Plus on Friday, Q and Kim Steve Kim might go ahead and dig into that a little bit, so I don't want to overtalk any analysis they have. The Giants and Eagles will face for the third time this year. That should be an interesting game. I think the Giants can do it, but who knows? This game is in Philly, and that's a tough place to play any time of the year, but especially in the playoffs. Bengals and Bills. That's going to be a good one. They're finally going to solve what didn't get solved on the field. I still kind of feel like the Bills will pull it off. And then the Cowboys and 49ers. This is an old classic NFC matchup. If you're old enough to remember the games in the 80s and 90s between these teams, specifically the 90s, where you've got Steve Young and Troy Aikman and Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Michael Irvin, those were some really just really deep, strong games, right? We don't have those marquee players anymore, but we still have the rivalry of it. So I think emotions will run high, and these two teams will bring their best to the table in that game. Hard to pick, man. I favor the home team in that one just because, especially coming off of such a high by beating Tom Brady on the road. I think that might affect the Cowboys, but I don't know for sure. So we'd love to get your input on what you thought of the games over the weekend. If you'd like to give predictions now, feel free to drop those in the comments. This has been T-Word for the Mike Check Podcast. Don't forget to tune in Friday, January 20th at 4 p.m. Central for our live stream with Steve Kim of snack.com. We appreciate you watching. Thank you for your time. I'm out. Peace.